Hello, and welcome to the Geometry Creative Week. I am Beth Ann Kamenko, Geometry's Global CEO, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to join us with some of the content that we prepared for this week. The idea of this week for us was really in the absence of being able to all be together on a lovely beach in Cannes. We really wanted to bring to our agency and to all of you some incredible content that explores how we're thinking about creative and creativity today. And so much of the content that you're going to find here, and we hope that you get to join us for, is coming from our creative leaders, from some of our other leaders across the business. And we're bringing to you people that have inspired us, that teach us, that stretch us, and really help us think through how we think about the application of creative and creativity today. Geometry is a creative commerce agency. So creative is inherent in how we think about the work that we provide to our clients. And it's in all meanings of the word creative. It is an output of what we deliver for our clients in many cases. It's also how we think about design thinking and solving for the problems that our clients are facing today in unique ways. Most of our channels and most of our work lives across what we think of as commerce and experiences to buy brands today. And we'll explore that too with many relevant speakers. So hopefully you will join us in our conversation and join us after the conversation with some of your feedback and hopefully as a friend of the family. Hey Mark, it's good to see you again. And we are very appreciative of having you join us for our Geometry Creative Week, also corresponding with the WPP TV Creative Week and what would have been a week of all of us at Cannes together.
Yeah, well, thanks very much for having me. And I guess I miss Cannes, although a lot of people I've spoken to rather enjoying the fact that we don't have to traipse down to the south of France for a week. But I think we will all miss it and the sort of celebration of creativity that it represents in our industry.
I know I'll miss it. Definitely the momentum that was building around the WPP beach as well. But what we found in creating the content for this week for us is we've gotten way more specific and customized or tailored about the content we've been able to share with our employees this week. So in a way, I think we're definitely making lemonade out of lemons. Yeah. So Mark, I would like to first just acknowledge and to thank you for what you're leading within WPP around Black Lives Matter and the commitments that we're making for anti-racism. So before diving into a creative conversation, I just want you to know that myself and all of Geometry is very appreciative of that swift focus that you have given it.
Well, thanks very much. And you know, it's important. You know, it's important, I think, to me personally. And you know, as I said in the note, it's both, I think, a business, you know, and a moral imperative. And it's not just a US issue. That's what has really struck me is that, you know, people around the world, you know, have been touched by the killing of George Floyd and the subsequent protests. And I think we do need to do more. And I think, you know, one of the great things about WPP is the voice that we have in the work that we do. And I think we can really hopefully make a difference. And I'm committed. I know you and the leadership of our key agencies is also committed.
And creativity ends up being an important ingredient in all of that, I think. And so it leads us to the conversation today. And when you were rethinking WPP, you were really intentional about making creative instrumental to the new brand positioning in terms of being a creative transformation company. I'm curious to learn more about why that was so important to you, and then examples that you've seen of WPP agencies using creativity in transformative ways.
You know, I think that when, you know, when I talk to actually a lot of client CEOs and CMOs, again and again, they stress to me that, you know, the reason they come to agencies and the reason they come to WPP is around, you know, the power of ideas, which is really what Cannes celebrates. And I think that's what makes us special and that's what makes us different. You know, creativity, I think, is at the heart of our business. And so, you know, it seemed like something that we really needed to reinforce. And I think, you know, clearly many of us believe it has been important and, you know, but I think that really putting it at the heart of the business was critical. And it's not to say that, you know, media and strategy and technology and all those other things aren't important. But I think that, you know, one thing that agencies do have that makes them special is creativity. And so I really wanted to reinforce that. And I think, you know, there's examples, you know, in everything that we do. I mean, You can take a brand like Dove, and the creation of the campaign for Real Beauty 20 years ago, which really changed a lot of the way that the beauty is perceived in the fashion and more broadly in society. It created a multi-billion-dollar brand, and a brand that during COVID has had campaigns both around health workers and most recently around Black Lives Matter. So I think that you can see that strong ideas really do connect with consumers.
And you mentioned obviously the pillar of technology, and you've got a tremendous background in technology and digital services. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on technology as an enabler, or the application of technology to deliver on sort of a creative promise and to really supercharge creativity in a ways that we haven't seen before.
Yeah, I think that in a way we don't really use it as formally, but there's a line in our brand film, creativity powered by technology, and in a sense that is what WPP is about and what our agencies are about. Creativity is important, but technology gives us a much broader canvas on which to apply our ideas, and so it's much broader than a 60-second television commercial, or in the case of Geometry, a retail promotion. I think we need to think about fashion and music and film and gaming, or a very broad range of creative industries when we now think about creativity. And I think that should make our jobs more interesting and the ideas we take to our clients more valuable. But a lot of that has been enabled by technology, gaming, esports. I think particularly on our mind at the moment, you saw the work that VMLY&R did for Wendy's in Fortnite. And I think there are many examples of the work from Geometry in the same areas.
And to that point, there's a lot of collaboration that goes behind that too. And it's our ability to lean into partnerships like with a TikTok or an Adobe or even a Salesforce and some of the other tech companies. What are your thoughts in terms of working together to create joint offer or to use their platforms to be more out in the forefront of different kinds of creative expressions?
Yeah, I think that if we're simplistic, in the old days, the format was 60 seconds, 30 seconds, or 15 seconds. It was a film for that time, and that's what people would work on. And then you'd have a poster or a radio ad that would derive from that film. The world's a little bit more complicated than that today, and I think a campaign on Instagram or a campaign on Facebook or a campaign on TikTok, each of those have to be different. The creators are different, the culture is different. It's not as simple as inserting a film. We did some work with P&G. So the governor of Ohio contacted David Taylor, the CEO of P&G, right at the beginning of the pandemic to say, we need help persuading young people in Ohio that they need to keep their distance. And Mark Pritchard spoke to the team at Gray, and they came up with this idea to use a TikTok influencer, Charlie D'Amelio, and this dance called distance dance. This has been viewed, if you can believe it, 16 billion times. I mean, it's hard to imagine, right? Now, what that relied on, the ability to understand the platform, who's influential with that audience, what creative idea would work with them, how to get in touch with them, how to get in touch with their, engage in the program. So it's a much more complex, creative sort of canvas, but actually has tremendous potential if you do it properly, and a massive reach.
So further to that point, as Geometry, we've been naming and positioning ourselves around this idea of creative commerce, and we're seeing channels that now become commerce channels, whether they were before and now they're being leveraged and capitalized on in new ways, or whether are things like TikTok that are now moving you into closer to shopping and buying of products. What are your thoughts? Is that an important territory for creativity and building brand equity, or do you think those two things can sometimes become conflicting and competitive?
I don't think there's a conflict. I mean, one of the interesting things about the way the world is going today is that media, content, commerce are all coming closer and closer together. You're on, I don't know, Instagram, and it's 2 clicks to buy something. So is the creative on Instagram trying to drive to purchase, i.e. you could argue Geometry type creative, or is it brand creative trying to drive brand awareness? And so I think that that the proximity makes creativity just as important. And I think it always has, and maybe commerce, or what maybe historically people would have called shopper marketing, has been underinvested in creatively. Sort of one example made me laugh, but when we first talked to John Bon Jovi about Hampton Water, I remember when I called him, he said, "Look, the one thing I love and you can't change is the label on the bottle." Right? It's fantastic. You can't change it. So I said, okay. So I gave you the brief, and then we went to the meeting. And the first thing you said in the pitch was, we have to change the label on the bottle. And I could see him look around. And I thought, oh God, this is going to be a complete disaster. But you had some research that showed that the old label, did not get people's attention. It was like rosé in a sea of rosé. And actually, by redesigning the bottle, a creative process, you could improve cut through and improve sales. And to his credit, he and his son looked at it and said, that's right. And so we changed the label for them. So I think that it's a broad creative canvas. Data and insight clearly play a role, but I think that's tremendous for Geometry to be able to be a much more creative organization. I think it will attract better people to the company, will make your work more rewarding, and it will drive better results for clients as well.
Yeah, well, it's underpinned by a good story, and one that we live to tell about, making sure that we were protecting the great equities in that label, but at the same time dialing up color and other elements to make it stand out on shelf a lot more. So it does show you the value of more of a shelf back, people forward way of thinking about design. So I want to turn the conversation just very quickly towards this end now, Mark, to personal. If you don't mind, I'd love to hear. I mean, obviously, we're all creative individuals. That's why we're in this industry. And, you certainly are. I get that sense a lot in working with you. So I would love to hear a little bit about your own sort of creative inspiration, what you do to get inspired, and just to feel like that kind of juices are flowing and that you're in your creative zone.
Well, I'm not. I sort of have an opinion on creative things, I'd say. I don't know that I'm the world's most creative person. I'm certainly not a talented artist or a musician or singer or writer, to be honest. But I do like photography. I do like art. I do have an opinion on things I see or don't see. I don't know. I think aesthetics are really important. Things I look at. I don't know, I might look at a chart in a PowerPoint presentation and describe it as being ugly. So I think that things that sort of work aesthetically are important. So design, I think, is really interesting and really important. And when we chose the new WPP identity, that was a painful process for all involved. But I think we ended up with a fantastic solution, thanks to the teams, at Super Union and Landor who did the work with us. But I think that that pushes us, and many of the great brands have got an attention to design and aesthetics that I think is really important.
So further to that point, we all have the things that give us energy during the day and the things that kind of take our energy. I won't ask you to tell us about the things that take your energy. We could probably guess on some of those, but I would like to hear a little bit about what are the meetings, or what are the types of things that happen during your day that give you energy?
I think, look, I love pitches. And being involved in pitches and helping that. This is where I see, the business come together, and where, we see our best people and our best work, and our clients see us in that way. And so I've always enjoyed, pitches and rehearsing pitches. I think talking, spending time with, the leaders of our company. I mean, look, it's been an odd few months, I have to say. We've both been sort of separated physically, but in a funny sort of way, connected online much more. I think you and I have probably spoken more the last 3 months than we did the 3 months before that, right? So I think that in a sense that's been really good. And I think, I get most satisfaction out of seeing the way in which WPP is succeeding and the way in which our brands are succeeding, and which, I think despite the sort of the inevitable challenges caused by, the economic situation following COVID, I think that, we are doing well, we are winning work, and our client satisfaction scores are improving, and we're working and learning to work in really new ways. I think, we mustn't forget when we all go back to, working from an office.
Okay, so instead of a rapid fire round to close this,
Yeah.
Almost as rapid fire, what would your pitch be for young talent graduating now, coming into the industry to come to WPP? What would that pitch sound like?
Look, I think this is a fantastic industry with great opportunity, great diversity of thought and people. We're an industry that tolerates, every kind of sort of misfit and expert and everything else. And we really are, I'd say, at the cutting edge of the creative businesses, but also the technology businesses. Where else do you go where you're working with a Google and a Facebook and a TikTok, as you say, but also working with some of the world's great brands and coming up with ideas. And so ours is a very rewarding industry. It's not perfect in every way, and we know there's elements around diversity and inclusion we need to do better on. But I think that for people starting out their career, there's no better place to start in many ways. And I can look at some of the alumni of our organization, from James Patterson, the author, to Bridget Riley, the artist, to Salman Rushdie, the author. Many great people have started in our business, and so hopefully people will see that, and certainly I see that.
Yeah, we were just talking about Charlotte Bears before you got on the call. Yeah. I would put her up there too, for sure. It's interesting because one of the things we've been saying also is it's one of the reasons why we can't make an announcement like a Twitter and say everyone should just work from home for the rest of their careers. We know that a part of what, and we talked about CAN at the start, but part of what we love about our industry is being in rooms and workshops and conferences and all of those types of things together, physically building off of each other's energy and creativity. So we're looking forward to those moments coming back again in the future.
We certainly are. And look, I'm sure in the future more of us will work flexibly and more of us will work from home, I've no doubt. But I don't think we want everyone working apart forever. I think we all miss the human contact and the collaboration and sense of spirit and everything else that comes with it.
Well, thank you, Mark. I really appreciate the time. And more than that, I know all of us were very admiring of your leadership approach from the beginning, but now in particular during the last 5 months where it's been incredibly difficult and we've faced so many challenging things that I don't think we could have anticipated. And your leadership has really been a beacon for us. So thank you very much for that as well.
Well, thanks, Bethan. And look, I have to say, I've really seen, I don't know what the right word is, resurgence or renewal, at Geometry under your leadership as well. So I think there's lots to be proud of. And, I think Geometry is really coming into its own as a brand and as a company, and its reputation is building, inside WPP and with our clients and in the industry. To have to look at, your track record of winning new business in the US. And I'm sure elsewhere, but I know the track record in the US has been fantastic. So I think there's much more to come, and really excited. And, we're totally committed to making Geometry a fantastic success, and I'm sure it will be. So,
well, thank you. Thank you for bringing Stacey and I together, and I appreciate the words of praise. So see you soon.
Not at all. It's the dynamic duo we call you. Yeah. All right. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
I am now excited to introduce you to Adrienne Smith, the Global Director of Inclusion and Diversity at WPP. I am honored to have her join us this week, especially because she was originally the founder of CAN, which is the diversity program across CAN to help us all generate awareness about how important it is to think about diversity when it comes to creating and creativity. It is definitely a commitment that we are all making right now to make sure that our creative ranks and our creative teams are drawing from a much more diverse set of individuals and points of view. It is the only way we know that we are able to really make incredibly extraordinary work for our clients and work that reflects the populations that we serve. So here is Adrienne to help us understand more about the ways we need to be thinking about this, the ways that we can do a better job within our organizations, and to really lean into the future of what is possible and what can be. So with that, I welcome Adrienne.
Hi, my name is Adrienne C. Smith, and I am the first Global Director of Inclusion and Diversity for WPP. So D&I is in my DNA. How do I identify? I'm the daughter of a mother who would kneel down in prayer by saying, "Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name." Next to my father, who would kneel down in prayer by saying, "Bismillah Rahman Rahim, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen." Can you imagine the Christmas holiday at my house? We didn't have a Christmas tree, but we had a Christmas couch. And every December 25th, we made sure that my dad had new socks and new underwear every time, so he did not feel left out. It was that ultimate moment where I learned about compromise, love, and respect. My dad would always say, never forget the things that you are supposed to remember. And as I think about this journey of inclusion and diversity, as we talk about the advertising movement or this mission, there was a moment in time where, I think it was 1998, where an organization, Katz Media, instructed their employees that when they were talking to buyers to remind them that they wanted to attract prospects and not suspects. Now, you can imagine that that sent off all types of, movements and protests, which essentially started the Madison Avenue Initiative. And the Madison Avenue Initiative really fought for the opportunity for minority-owned businesses, both Black and Hispanic, to really get their fair share of media buys. So at that time, a lot of organizations were able to now get a fair share of the media buy, and again, start ownership of companies that they had not had the opportunity to do before. I'd say about 10 years later, there was a research project that was created. I think it was like on the discrimination divide, which really talked about how women were not in leadership positions in advertising agencies, and they definitely weren't being paid the same amount, as well as people of color and Black people who were also in similar positions. They were doing worse, not in senior leadership positions, and definitely not making the same amount of money. So from that point, there were EEOC filings, and really some movement was being made to make sure that everyone was getting a fairer opportunity as it related to job opportunities. From there, we moved into another 10-year cycle. And I think it was about people raising their hands and stepping up and saying, we can do this with opportunities, whether it was the Marcus Graham Project or AdColor or, any of the Center for Excellence in Advertising at Howard University that the 4A supported. There are really moments in this particular time where people were being actionable about the things and changes that can make. So if we look at it, we went through a phase of diversity, we went through a phase of inclusion, we went to the phase of equity, and now I really believe that we are in that moment of accountability. And how can we do, make everyone accountable for their actions? I would say there is, people talk about the future, but future for me is the new F word, right? Forgive me, but it's the new F word. I choose to say forward focused instead, because if you think about it, there are no guarantees with the future. It gives leadership and people the opportunity to push things off as opposed to acting now. And if you're in a forward focused moment, then that gives you the opportunity to do the work now. You still have goals, you still have aspirations, but in a forward focused movement, you have to act now. So this is sort of the foundation of what I believe. And if we have this moment, we go into what I believe the escape velocity. And the escape velocity, and I may be like a science nerd, but the escape velocity is that moment when an object leaves the Earth's atmosphere at such the right velocity and speed that it does not fall back and crash down to the earth and burn. So what if we got to that escape velocity point in the advertising industry? so that we would not return back to the bad behaviors and bad things that we've been doing. And we're repeating these cycles over and over again. So my goal in this forward focus movement is to make sure that we have the right escape velocity, that we are moving our industry forward into a way and path of success. So let me share a little bit with you about my journey in the advertising industry. I started at Leo Burnett in Chicago, Illinois. And really, I think I must have had a unique experience, because when I was at Leo Burnett, I saw women of color, Black women in particular, all through the ranks as it related to leadership positions. There was Renetta McCann, who was the media director. There was Karen Coleman, who was an associate media director, and Renee Brown, who was a media supervisor. So I could clearly see a journey to a leadership position or, success in the advertising industry. Little did I know that that was like an anomaly for most people of color or Black people in this advertising industry. And I found myself really with this opportunity to create moments for other folks who did not do the same thing that I did. I remember an instance where there was a company called Heart and Soul magazine, and they were a health magazine, and I worked on the Kellogg's account. And I watched how we would actually craft stories to make sure, or do media plans that would allow us to invest in new media properties. So like a magazine like Heart and Soul magazine, they had the right demographics, they had everything. The only difference was it was owned by a Black-owned company. So what I did was I crafted the story and was able to create an opportunity that Heart and Soul was the first Black magazine that was bought by Kellogg's, for this particular brand. So that was sort of my journey and aha moment of, you have to be at the table to create opportunities for other people. I left Leo Burnett and then moved to New York, and I worked for a minority-owned television syndication sales. I know people are like, syndication, what is that? But there was syndication, it still exists, but in a smaller way. But this organization, we took African-American movies that had been sitting on, movie studio shelves for years, and created a package where that we could represent it back out into the media or back out into the public. So we had wraparounds with Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee. But when we went to sell this movie package, we literally had to educate media buyers and planners on the significance of why it was important to just separate your buy or provide opportunities for Black-owned media properties. The thought was that we can catch everybody in a general market buy, but understanding that there was a significance and importance of when you advertise in programming specifically targeted to Black people or specifically targeted to the general market. I mean, if you really think about it, our must-see Thursday night at the time was very different from the general market's must-see night. So there was Friends, but there was Living Color or Living Single, if you will, for those two distinct markets. But it's all about the intentionality of the buyer and how you're speaking in that voice to the the community, the advertiser speaking to the community, that makes the difference. So I was always creating opportunities for minority-owned businesses to find their space and find their voice. Many years later, I ended up working at Howard University for the Center for Excellence in Advertising. And this is during that time where there was a hard push for the industry to find mid to senior level managers to get into the advertising industry. Our industry was struggling again to get more Black people or people of color in the advertising industry. So when I worked at Howard University as their executive director for their Center for Excellence in Advertising, we created programs that allowed us to take people with transferable skills and non-traditional advertising backgrounds to train them to get into the advertising industry. The program was a success. It was supported through the 4As. We had boot camp that targeted early career young people, and then we had a lateral movers program. And I would say at least 68% of those people that were in the lateral movers program are actually still in this industry today. As a matter of fact, 2 of them have become Cannes Lion winners. So imagine me thinking, well, those awards actually are mine because they were in my program. I tell the story about how I eventually moved into the position I am, and the journey has been super interesting. Once one of the young ladies that was in the program, we met maybe 8 years afterwards, and she came to me and we had lunch, and she said, Adrienne, it's your fault. And I was like, what's my fault? She's like, I'm starting my own company, and if it wasn't for you and your program, I wouldn't be here. So it's important to note that she actually was on the pharma side. She was in our program, and we gave her the knowledge base, the information to do her job successfully in the advertising industry. And she was able to get a job at BBDO, and then ultimately finished her career moved her career to be a global director at Ogilvy. She now has started her own company, and it focused on, recruiting more people of color and into this industry, specifically on the creative side. So after we had that lunch, she told me that she was going to Cannes, and I said, I'm going too. The funny thing is, I was supposed to go to Cuba the next day. I went to Cuba. I booked my flight on the shoddy Wi-Fi that was there, came back on a Wednesday, flew to Cannes on that Saturday. I had to go through Turkey, but I got there, and when I tell you, it was one of the most inspiring experiences I've ever had. It was just incredible. And during that time that I was there was a huge conversation about inclusion and diversity, and how do we get more people of color to the Cannes Lions Festival. And I thought to myself, is that a trick question? I mean, why don't you just create opportunities? Why don't you provide access? Why don't you let people know that this is happening? Clearly we know that Cannes Lions is like the creme de la creme. It's like the Oscars of the advertising world, but still there was a struggle to get people of color there. And, as I think about it, and I looked around, out of the 15,000 people that attended the festival, there were only 200 that really, and apparently that was a good year, that looked like me. And so that was the moment when I was really inspired to just do something, just to take a stand with no big brand name behind me, and find ways to get more people that look like me to the festival. I mean, we had a few entertainers that were there. We had people that were working at booths that looked like me there, but no true large amount of subject matter experts there to talk about the actual work that they were doing. Another piece of that that inspired me was I ran into another participant from the program at Howard, and he told me, we were just walking down the Crusette, and he told me, Adrienne, if it wasn't for you, I would not be here. And I've won like 6 Cannes Lion Awards. So imagine that feeling that gave me of somebody that I had touched, some life that I had touched, a program that I worked with, had gotten them to the level of winning a Cannes Lion Award. So what that told me was that all you needed was access. All you need is an opportunity, and we can be successful in this industry. So it was at that moment, and maybe a conversation at the Female Quotient, hearing Halle Berry talk about how, she had she was an integral part in having a law passed in California about the paparazzi to protect her children and have free space. And she said, at some point you just had to stop talking about it and be about it. And that really became my mantra of, no more talk, no more, meetings. You just really had to take action. So it was during that time that I decided for 2018, I would bring more young people to Cannes. So I was able to get support from some agencies and brands. And we brought 5 young people to Cannes to participate in the Cannes Lions Young Lions Academy. The great thing about that is I randomly ran into the deans of the Roger Hatchell Academy and asked, how's the program going? And they said, it's really great. We've got these 2 young women in the program who are so dynamic, and they're really shifting the narrative and how the questions are being formed and the response. They're keeping us on our toes. And they mentioned that they were the 2 young ladies that I brought to Cannes. So imagine, the pride and excitement that I had that the 2 women that I brought to the program were really making a difference. And, further, to that point of, what was inspirational about it was one of the young ladies said to me, Adrienne, if it had not been for this program, number one, I never would have known that I could compete on an international level, or that I had the option to work somewhere outside of the United States. So I'm like, wow, that is such an inspirational thing. And I was like, damn it, I have to do it again. So in 2019, I brought 25 young people back to Cannes Lions to participate in the Academy and be our ambassadors. And, it was also the time where we hosted the first inclusion and diversity activation at Cannes Lions in their 66-year history. And we called it Inkwell Beach Cannes. So we had 5 days of programming. We intentionally made sure that, yes, it was an inclusion and diversity conversation, but we elevated the conversation. So the people who were talking about innovation, creativity, and new beginnings were all people who were from diverse backgrounds. I, in my mind, was creating the space for me and people that look like me. But the beauty of, being inclusive is that people feel like other people feel like they belong. One of the exciting things was when people walked into the activation, we would always say, welcome home. So just, imagine when someone else who doesn't look like you says, thank you for creating this space for me. It was really one of those powerful moments. I guess the exciting part of that too was the first C-suite speaker that we had was actually Mark Reed and Jackie Canny, who worked for WPP, and I had no idea in less than a year later that I would be a part of the WPP family. So how serendipitous was that? So that was really kind of the beginning and sort of how I moved into this space of, getting to where I am at WPP. But it was really driven out of my purpose in life was about creating opportunities for people who had been traditionally left out of the conversation. So we are here at Geometry's Creative Week. And, I think it's really important to talk about sort of the journey of creativity and sort of what allows people to be their most exciting and authentic self and kind of produce that great creative that we want them to do, that's award-winning, that keeps the clients happy, that keeps customers engaged in the work and business that we do. I think, I always talk about, and this is me taking my own creative license, when I look at WPP, I look at those letters, WPP, and I strip it from what the original meaning was. And I think about WPP as something that I can internalize and something that I can make mine. And I see that W as inevitably standing for we, right? And then the last P will always stand for people. But the second P, which I think has so much energy, so much work, that's where the action is. That second P can mean anything from purpose to pride to we promote, it's where the power is, right? So my favorite thing to say is WPP means we empower our people. And that creates an opportunity for all of us to grow and do some amazing work. As we're going through this experience that we're going through, the pandemic and, which is all about COVID-19, and then the endemic, which is really about racism. And that's been systemic for all of us for years, for me and my ancestors for years, but it now creates an opportunity for all of us to do something different. And so now we have the creative license to work with our people differently. And through the inclusion and diversity team, we're providing, conscious inclusion trainings for people to just be more aware and how to be more inclusive. When you're more inclusive, you're more apt to get better, well-rounded work. So we're not, going back through this cycle of, client review. Why did you have this ad this way? But you have more diverse, more inclusive voices at the table who can really sort of nip that in the bud and make sure that we get some amazing work. that's done. So I'm excited about being a part of the WPP team and being a part of this family where we're doing the best creative work I think, this industry has ever seen. So one of my favorite quotes, and I think it's really, will help tie all of this together for us today, is by Sylvia Wagoda. And Sylvia Wagoda was the executive director for the Holocaust Museum in Atlanta. And she said this: there are three types of people in every atrocity. There's the perpetrator, the victim, and the bystander. The worst of these is the bystander, because they further victimize the victim with their silence while simultaneously giving permission to the perpetrator. As we think about that statement, we can think about something clear that just happened in recent history, where we watched the three policemen in Minneapolis watch their partner take the life out of a man and did nothing. Then we became bystanders to those bystanders. And so now we have to decide, what will we do? What action will we take? Will we be like those three police officers who did nothing? Or will we take a more actionable step? Will we do something different that will create and effectuate some change? So I have three things, or three thoughts that I have that could help move us forward. The first one is honor the past. And what do I mean by that? I mean, we should really think about where we are, how do we get to this place where we are? Think about our failures, think about our successes, and honor them, and make sure that we learn key lessons so that we can take that next step, which would be to number 2, create a clear change mandate. And what do I mean by that? We have to act now. I love that Mark Reed came up with the actionable steps that WPP would take, and he was precise and concise and very intentional about the decision of how we would move WPP and all of our brands forward. You have to, what I call, we have the global relevance, and that will take a step, but drill down to the geometry side. What will geometry do for the local relevance? How will you make this work for you? What action steps will you create, and make sure that it's clear and an actionable way to move for change? The final step, I would say, is make sure you have a rigorous and optimistic way forward. And what does that mean? I think we're still kind of going in the same circle of making sure that the path is clear, and know that you can do it. Be inspired by the energy that you have, the inclusion movement that you're about to create, that makes sure that everyone is included in the conversation. All of the personas, from leadership all the way down to the entry-level team members, have a voice, and everyone feels like they can be their true, authentic selves in this process. Make sure that we are building an environment that is open, optimistic, and allows us to do some extraordinary creative work. I'm excited about the journey ahead. I thank you so much for inviting me to participate today. And please know that I am here to support you. So feel free to email me. You can find me at Adrianne, adrianne.smith@wpp.com, or pick up the phone and call me. I don't know my cell number, but I'm sure it's there somewhere. But please, make sure that you find me or anybody on the WPP culture team to provide you the support that you need to be a part of this forward-focused movement.
Good morning, afternoon, and good evening, and welcome once again to Geometry Creative Week. It is day 1. It is very exciting. My name is Manuel Borde. I'm Regional Creative Lead of North America, and in the next 30 minutes or so, I will attempt to define, with a very subjective approach, what iconic is in the world of retail. I'm going to point out to the sub-headline there. As you can see, throughout the week, we will have a different take on what iconic means to each one of the regional creative leads. And that's what's so fun about it, right? So what we're going to do now, and you can see, is that I've highlighted first the two main words that we need to, let's say, have a clarification before we even start. Those words are, as I was saying, iconic, and the other one is retail. It is important for us to understand and define what retail is. Now, us as Geometry, we know it. We perfectly and fully understand that retail as we know it no longer exists. What we thought at the beginning was just, the physical space where the process of selling goods and services has now moved into a digital virtual space. Sometimes it pops out of nowhere and surprises you where you go. And it's something that even you can, carry in your pockets. So that's very important for us to understand that what we're looking at now is not an approach of how we can do a great shopper, but how we can think about retail as a more omnipresent thing. You will see as well our big debate on what iconic is. I was looking at an article written by Liz Madigan in a blog I like called Medium, and she was defining how we have sometimes overused the term iconic. And it's not just that it's overused, it's just that it's so wide. And I think that you will see, one of the most bizarre slides I've ever built, putting the Beatles and Grumpy Cat in one single slide, but it actually represents how wide the definition of iconic is, right? No doubt the Beatles were an iconic symbol when it comes to music. But I can also argue, and we can all also argue, that Grumpy Cat was an iconic, let's say, representation of, today's social media. So what I want us to understand is not to take it into the say about how are we going to define iconic in a way that we're going to do something that is equally good as the Beatles or equally as fantastic as Grumpy Cat. No, let's look into iconic in a different lens. What we should focus on when we talk about iconic is focus on what iconic means to us, means to our clients, and means to our peers, and of course, our consumers. Although I want to just highlight there consumers, because sometimes we as advertisers, we put a lot of pressure upon ourselves, right? About creating work or giving advertising the responsibility of creating iconic, things for society, which sometimes is not the case. So let's think about what that means to us, as Geometry. And I'm going to tell you here what it means to me. Great work for me is work that is CSR, and you would imagine that what I'm referring to is a brand purpose component or corporate social responsibility angle, but it's not actually that. For me, great work is work that is culturally cool, it's smart, and it's resourceful. So what does it mean? Culturally cool is this work awe or surprising enough for me to share it with someone? Yeah. Does it involve cool tech, cool stunts, cool innovation? Can I go and say, wow, that was actually pretty cool, right? And is it culturally relevant? That's a major part of it as well. When you go and think about smart, does this idea actually hack or beat the system? Does it go around the rules? Did we discover a new media use for it? And the reaction that we're looking for here is saying, wow, that was actually pretty smart. And when you talk about resourceful, we don't necessarily need to think about iconic and thinking about those immense budgets that, have to and depend on a big celebrity to be able to execute it. We're thinking more about the right budget for it, right? And the right budget means finding a solution that doesn't require spending that much money if it's not necessary, or needing a celebrity if you don't need to use a celebrity. A great example of this is most of the work that we see in Super Bowl. That not necessarily is iconic, it just has huge budgets and long cast of celebrities, right? So I guess another question that we ask ourselves when we talk about resourceful is, do we make the idea happen no matter what the budget is, right? And can we make it happen? So let's have a look at some examples of work. So think about as well, a good exercise that we can do ourselves is, and I like to do this very personally, is can this idea make it to an Adweek or Ad Age headline? And I think that this doesn't just apply for people that are working in the States. While I was working in Dubai, we had this in our mind as well, being able to have this idea being recognized and talked about in social media and different blogs specialized as well. And if it does, then what would that headline be? And that's a good exercise to see whether we have in our hands something that is culturally cool, that is smart, and that is resourceful. I'm going to show you a couple of work examples. And full disclosure, I am going to show you work that I have either creatively led or worked on. So I can show you exactly examples that I can talk about. No doubt that there's a lot of iconic work out there, but I thought that it would be easier for me to explain to you what I believe is great based on the work that I've judged. So the first example is the Prill One Drop bottle. And this is a clear example of how a client comes to you and tells you, I have a problem. And the problem was pretty clear. Prill had for many years, maybe even decades, had positioned itself with a very clear benefit of the product, which is one drop is enough to wash a whole full set of dishes. The problem was that its main competitor, which was Fairy, had more budget, had more power, and started to steal from Prill that big claim. So a ask would be very simple, right? Go full on steam in the retailer and shopper, and let's create a very nice key visual with a very powerful line that talks about the power of one drop. But then the question is, why would you say it if you can prove it? And that's what led to the Prill One Drop bottle.
Prill dishwashing liquid has concentrated power. That means to completely clean a whole set of dishes, it only takes one drop of Prill. That's what we've been saying for years. Until our biggest competitor started promising the same.
Oops. If I were you, I'd use that drop.
So to retain ownership and make our everlasting promise big again, we decided to go small. Meet the Prill One Drop bottle. The exact Prill detergent bottle, reduced to the size of a thumbnail. Carefully crafted in a 6-month production process. The special edition bottle was announced through a film. And soon went big in supermarkets across UAE. To amplify the message, we created a series of short films, GIFs, and posts for social media. The drop was so powerful, it made quite a splash.
حجرب نقطة ونشوف. That's excellent. You're obviously saving money.
I don't know, I can't believe it's this small. I mean, look at this one and look at this.
Prill, making dishwashing easier and much more efficient, one drop at a time.
So yeah, so the Prill bottle. For the next case, it's a good example of how we should be very proactive as well on proposing the where. And again, we have a case of a client that we had, which was a Unilever client, and the very request about repositioning, or not repositioning, just reinforcing a whole idea of, pushing kids to enjoy and to go outside and play and actually get dirty. So the big question is, how do you break out of the clutter in retail? And our solution to them was actually taking the product outside of it and going into a space where you can surprise. And here's where we decided a great space for this would be actually where, you know, parents would buy these clothes for their kids right before they get dirty. And here's where we came up with a sampling innovation that as well included a new way of product testing.
Detergent sampling at supermarkets has been around for years. And for years, it has been the same. As an advocate of an active lifestyle for children, Omo needed something new to grab people's attention and reinforce their dirt is good claim. It needed to break away from the supermarket clutter, literally. So we took it to children's clothes before dirt even came. Introducing the Omo tag. Made completely out of Omo laundry detergent and 100% water soluble. Just remove the tag and place it inside your washer. One tag is enough to remove the dirt of 3 messy garments. To launch the Omo tag, we partnered with Sports Forever, Beirut's largest sporting goods store for adults and children, adding over 5,000 detergent tags to clothing across their multiple stores. With an online film, we made sure the tag went from stores to people across the world. Soon, the Omo tag will make its way across new stores in 4 different markets. Omo tag. The first wash is on us. Go out and play.
Here's another story of how we can take their KFC restaurant and be able to engage with the consumers. Always keeping in mind, of course, what the promise of the brand is, right? Which is finger licking good. So incentivizing people to keep on eating with their hands. We came up with a very clever solution and, let's say, fun in a way about how we can turn most of our in-store material, which is from the, you know, the receipts plus the bags plus, you know, the trays mats, into a napkin that they can use after they have eaten.
Kentucky Fried Chicken is delicious. And eating at our restaurants is fun and super casual. To celebrate how cool is eating with your hands, and because the second thing we heard after yum is always more napkins, please, we heard and we delivered. KFC got napkinized. The napkins that revolutionized napkins. By utilizing a special ink-resistant tissue paper, strong enough to wipe but thin enough to get printed, we gave a second usage to all the paper inside our restaurants, inviting everyone to eat the way they love, with their hands. We napkinized a lot of stuff: placemats, food bags, posters, flyers, even the cashier receipt. Basically, everything. The napkinization started in Dubai and Beirut in January 2020, but the news spread fast, as did the napkins, reaching more than 7,000 people on ground and millions more on social media. KFC napkinized. Napkins in any way you can imagine, because there is nothing better than eating KFC with your bare hands.
Who would do it with a knife and a fork? Donald Trump.
And for the last example I'm going to show you, I brought the Promoticon, and I brought an app. And of course, here's kind of like the place where you go inside. The purist of heart would say, why would this be an example of a retail execution? And the big question that we have is, well, today, even some of the apps, you know, double up as a retail space. If you think about it, your app icon is the front of your store. Within the app, you're going to drive into sale. You're going to even have push and banners to be able to get them to do the transaction. And it just amps into that, into a retail space that you're carrying in your phone and you're carrying in your pocket. So what we had now, or what we had then, sorry, with our Promoticon idea, what McDonald's came in with the problem was that, hey, I'm not getting people to download the app. And when they do, I'm not getting people to engage with the app. So how do I keep them constantly engaged? Of course, the first thing that you think about when you get a brief like this is like, hey, let's go change the app. Let's add some gaming. Let's add some, some pretty exciting, engaging thoughts. But then again, McDonald's came back to us and said, hey, you of course, cannot touch anything of the interface of the app. So we were like, okay, so what do we do then? And here's where we say, okay, how do you find a hack around it? Or how do you go around the rules? And here's where we found out that something as simple as the app icon can be updated constantly. And here's where we came up with
the McDonald's McDelivery app. It's easy, it's fast, it's delicious. But it's also just a regular delivery app. With so many on our phone already, our problem was not just getting people to download it, but to keep using it. Changing the whole app platform takes time, lots of time. So instead, we created a promotion changing something smaller, our app icon. McDonald's presents the Promoticon. Whatever the app icon looks like, you get for free with your order. If it's a Big Mac, you get it for free. If it's fries, easy, free fries. And more, much more. The app icon became the media, and all we had to do was update a new icon to the App Store and Play Store every week. To launch the Promoticon, we went outside people's phones. We didn't need to push any notification. People were actually pushing us for new updates. So, what does the icon look like today?
So here you go, 4 ideas. And if you think about it, and we go back to what we were talking about at the beginning of our presentation, what does it mean for us? What does it mean for our peers? What does it mean? What do they mean for our clients? These were ideas that not just had the component of being, sometimes culturally cool, smart, and very resourceful. They were also ideas that meant a lot for our clients and for their business. These are not just ideas that got awarded in festivals like Lynx and Cannes. They actually got heavily awarded in Effie's. So kind of like makes you understand that when you aim to do great work, it should be aiming to do work that works in all senses, in all worlds, right? So what can we do looking forward? And how can we get to work that we are, again, proud of doing, proud of showing, and that works perfectly for the business of our clients and brings effective results? I'm going to talk to you about 5 things that we can do. The first one is to unlearn the rules. Now, I want to also have a kind of like a disclaimer in a way about the work that you saw previously was basically created and led in an agency that was not necessarily focused like we are on retail and creative commerce. That at the same time allowed us to be a little bit more free on the things that we were proposing, because we didn't understand that there were already some rules set on retail. But that's the thing. That's what you should do. You should always think about, okay, I understand that there's certain rules in certain retail spots that I cannot do, but I can always ask, right? And that's what we want to do. That what we want to move is from a culture of it cannot be done, or it's not allowed, or it's not possible to do, to a culture of let me see how I can do it, or let me ask if it's possible. And here's where we can get very pleasant surprises of how far we can go in the different retail spaces, whether they're physical or digital, or they pop up out of nowhere to surprise someone. Number two, we have to reimagine how we concept. And I'm very happy to say that at least what we're doing now leads to that. Reimagining how we concept means a line of copy and a key visual is not an idea, right? That could be the start of it, but it's not actually the idea. An idea is the idea, right? There's so many things you can do that are an idea, right? An innovation is an idea. Smart packaging is an idea. A stunt, a promo activation, a pop-up experience, a hack, cultural response. These are all ideas. The other ones are not. This is just a line of copy and a key visual. So that's something that we have been reinforcing in North America, and we have been, advancing on that, and we have been doing. Be curious. And I don't say be curious like, very romantically. Everyone will say, parents will say, you have to be curious to be able to do something. But it makes sense, if I am going to do something in a certain space that involves a certain app or that involves a certain retailer, well, just don't take the word for it, go and explore. Walking into the store and seeing how it is, to try out the app, try out, download whatever it is, right? So it's kind of like that moment where you go in and said, hey, in order for us to make great campaigns in social media platforms, I really have to actually open a profile on that platform and explore all the possibilities I can have with it. And the same thing goes with retail spaces that are physical or online or whatever it is. We have to explore these channels. You cannot just, take it from whoever's telling you how it is. Go and see yourself how it is, right? And that will allow you to be more creative in this sense as well. Be proactive. I cannot insist on this one as much. Should perfectly be number one here, right? And it's true. Like our industry, we of course sometimes are a little bit too reactive, right? And less proactive. And I think that the perfect balance is, of course, being 70% proactive and 30% reactive and 40% proactive. I know that is more than 100%, but that's the whole idea of this. Because if you really, really want to do great work, this is work that doesn't necessarily just fit from 9 to 5 p.m. It's work that you take home, that you're thinking of it constantly. How can it make it better? How can we improve it? And it requires extra dedication, and it requires putting in extra hours, to tailor that case so it looks fantastic, to make sure that each part of the design looks perfect. That's what you need to do. So that you need to always give that little extra, and that little extra should not be asked for. You yourself should bring it on the table. And last but not least, and it's something that we always, and I coined this to Burger King it. And of course, everyone knows and admires the work that Burger King does. But we also need to understand that Burger King doesn't need to roll out, globally or nationally to do work that everyone knows about. Actually, as a matter of fact, most of the work that you know about it, you haven't even experienced yourself, but you've heard of it. We don't have to go fully globally or to all markets. All you need is just one market to test it, to do it once, to understand that potential about making it, documenting it properly, and then amplifying it. And here's where I say that, there's a big lending hand of working together with the corporate communications team and the PR team. Every single campaign that you think is great work should be worked together, because it's a big part of it as well. And sometimes we sin because we just do great work, but we never, document it, and we never tell anyone about it. And only the people that actually go into the retail stores and, have the results and everything are the people that can experience it. But you can do so much more. We can amplify it so much more. And that's exactly what Burger King does. So it's something as well that we should do. So there's the 5 things that we can do. Of course, we can do much more. But I think that just to wrap it up, it's clear, we are in a part of our storyline, and we are in a point where we got perfectly the mission and the definition of what we are, and we have the tools. And now it's the time to start getting the work that defines us, right? And it's that time to bring in that great work that we call iconic. That's it. That is our presentation. That is our take on what iconic could be. I'd love to hear, of course, your questions and your opinions. I guess that if we are already kind of thing running out of time, don't just shoot me a message and I would gladly reply to anything. And I'm really, really looking forward to our Global Council, where we're going to start seeing some of this amazing work.
Hi, it's Beth Ann Kamenko, Global CEO of Geometry, and I'm sharing with you a little bit about what creatively inspires me. We talk a lot about what are inspiration, what are our motivators when it comes to feeling creative. And I think, like most of you, I'm always in the flow when I'm creative. Like, if that's part of my day and I can infuse it into the work that I'm doing, it makes all the difference for the type of feeling that I have throughout the day and the ease of which I'm able to put forward my thinking and leverage my imagination and just feel like I'm having a great day. So for me, I start every day with a run, and it really does just help. Well, first of all, I wake up with a lot of energy, so it helps me channel that energy into things that are more productive and effective from a life and business standpoint. It also gives me the chance to just sort of let my mind think about the stuff that are either problems that I have to tackle or work through, or things that I'm concerned and sort of cycling through in my mind. And it makes me either really intentional about how to solve for those and what to do about them, or it allows them to sort of dissipate and become less of a distraction throughout the day. The other thing I do is spend a lot of time searching content and looking for other people that are creative, because creative people love other creative people. And it's funny because whenever I think about content that I watch, the content I remember is the content that made me feel something. That usually was the content that was most creative, most unique and novel. And that's the stuff that I wait for, I hold on to, and then it inspires my own thinking for how do I bring that self-expression forward for myself. And I find for me personally, it's the part that kind of puts the texture, the flavor, the sparkle into life and makes life so worthwhile, and worthwhile not just for yourself, but also worthwhile sharing. And so I get so much pleasure out of other people's creativity. I'm currently a huge masterclass fan. And so I've been absorbing a lot of that information, and especially the creative artists across all kinds of platforms and backgrounds that are sharing their wisdom through that. I highly recommend it. The other thing I really love is comedy. And so looking for people who use creativity in very comedic ways that are really clever about the writing and about pulling human insights into their work that help us all both explain life, but also sometimes make light of life. So that's a little bit about creativity for me.
Welcome everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Laura Johnston. I'm the Executive Creative Director in Geometry Chicago office, and I am so excited to welcome my client and huge next generation creative talent, co-founder of Hampton Water, Jesse Bon Jovi, to the discussion today around the creative sommelier. Cheers, Jesse. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here, chat about a little pink juice, you know.
The best kind. Well, let's go ahead and dive in. As co-founder of a rosé company, I'm sure you feel inspired by creativity, whether it's through music or art or your personal passions. Can you tell us a little bit about what inspires your creativity and where you pull inspiration from?
For sure, yeah. I mean, you know, in this day and age, obviously everything is changing very rapidly, you know, especially when the pandemic kind of started and people were suddenly kind of locked in their homes. We had to kind of act quick because things that were really our bread and butter, you know, restaurants all over the country were suddenly closed, and there was really no timeline for when they would open up again. And so we had to really look around, not only through social media, but just sort of traditional press and things like that, and look at how other companies were sort of dealing with this issue and still getting to their consumers. And so we did a number of different things, whether it was Instagram lives or you know, different giveaways, things like that, just to keep consumers engaged, because we knew that who knew when the next time they were going to be able to go to their kind of local watering hole and have a glass of wine with their friends. So we tried to do everything that we could very quickly to make quick changes and continue to get the word out about our brand.
Yeah.
So we grab inspiration from anywhere we can get it. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think with the way that the world is moving and changing so quickly, that's almost how you have to be today, is to pull inspiration, whether it's from adversity or from the environment around you. I always try to feel and fuel my own creativity through the energy of other people, whether it's clients like you or my coworkers or friends or family. If you had to pick one person whose creative energy you admire, living or dead, who would that be for you? And then tell us a little bit about why.
Yeah, I mean, I think one person that really came to mind, and I think it's a good example, is Steve Jobs. I don't know, for those of you that have seen this video, I've watched it 100 times, but it wasn't actually an interview or anything with him, but it was an explanation basically of how Apple really changed their way of marketing to people. And it's kind of this great diagram of 3 different rings. And it's basically saying, what we are, who we are, how we are. So it's basically this idea that essentially everyone in the world is saying, we have these great computers, they can do this, they can do this, they can do this. With it, you can do this and this and this. And that's who we are. And Apple, and I would imagine Steve Jobs, really kind of turned that on its head and said, that we're a great computer. This is who you are. This is what this product makes you. And it can do this and you can do this. And so I've really sort of tried to internalize that. And especially with Hampton Water, we try to position ourselves as a real lifestyle brand. And so our whole thing is, what good rosé is. The world knows what good wine tastes like. And everyone has good wine nowadays. You can find good wine anywhere. But we really try to set ourselves apart and say, we always kind of joke whenever we're going into restaurants and things like that. We say, we want to be in the places that you want to be. And we want to really focus on creating that lifestyle. And so all of our social media stuff, all of the restaurants that we really go after to try to target are really intended to push this idea of, if you're sitting on a beautiful rooftop in Manhattan and the sun's going down, you're drinking Hampton Water. If you're on the beach in Santa Monica, and you're hanging out at a kind of cool, hip place, you're drinking Hampton Water. If you're on the mountain in Aspen, you're drinking Hampton Water. And so that's really always been sort of our inspiration, is what are the kind of cool places and who are the people that we envision drinking the wine, and how do we get it to those people? Because that is really what's going to push the narrative of the people that know we're drinking the best wine in the world, and they're drinking Hampton Water.
I love it. You think about your brand as a narrative, and also it can also be a nice compliment to Zoom interviews in your home office with a favorite client.
Very true. It definitely is it's a good way to start any morning. I'm out on the West Coast right now, and so this is my lunch.
Cheers to that. Obviously, given the role that music has played in your life, especially, and defined, I'm sure, like many different periods of your life, and given like starting this brand, if you had to equate a song that defined the brand and this moment for you, I'm gonna ask you a really hard question. What song would that be, and why? Well, it's a little bit of a loaded question. Sorry.
It is. I mean, obviously music has always played a huge role in my life. I've always had a very eclectic taste in music, and I listen to all different kinds of music. But one song that I really have always sort of pulled inspiration from is, and it's really a whole album, but one song specifically is Sideline Story by J. Cole, who's a rapper from North Carolina. And it's really just about how when he was in high school and how he's sort of throughout his life has felt like he's always been passed up, and I really sort of looked at that, playing college sports. I was never really the biggest, strongest, fastest guy. And it was really something that I always kind of looked at and said, the whole story about how do you get up off the sidelines? How do you kind of get in the game? How do you set yourself apart? And so that's always been a song that's really been inspirational to me, and something that I've always really tried to carry kind of throughout my life is, he has this great line of, he's tired of coming up short, expletive abbreviated, wants his whole name spelt out. And so the whole thing is that it's about, and I think with me specifically, having my father be involved in this business, and he's always been a large shoes to kind of fill in my life. How do I kind of set myself apart from that, and how do I set myself apart from that throughout, everything that I try to do? And people always kind of come to us and go, oh, well, why didn't you call it, rock and roll rosé, or how come you don't, the bottle, it doesn't have your dad's face on it, it would sell a million bottles and things like that. And we've always said that we wanted this to be more than just a celebrity brand. We didn't want this to just be a vanity project. We wanted this to be a real family business, and we wanted it to be something that, if you knew the story, great. If that's what got you into the store, awesome. But now going into our third year, we've kind of reached a point where people are looking for Hampton water. They're not going in going, where's Bon Jovi's rosé? They're going in looking for our bottle, and they recognize the diver, and they recognize real aspects of the product. And so that's really been something that has always been an inspiration of me, is, how do you get off the sidelines and really get in the game?
I love it. I'm going to go off script for just a second. And will you share, because I know the story of how Hampton Water came to be, but I think it's a really creative story. And I think it's proof that you truly do find inspiration from the world around you. Will you tell that story again one more time for everybody?
Yeah. So it is kind of a funny story, and it is one of those stories that I think it just goes to show that there are no bad ideas, and it's just a matter of kind of going out and making your ideas a reality. But literally, Hampton Water was born from a very late night of drinking out on the east end of Long Island. Me and my college roommate, Ali Thomas, we both, grew up in New York. We both grew up going out to the Hamptons. And when we met at Notre Dame, we basically became very fast friends. And every summer we'd spend together going out and partying in the Hamptons. And the running joke became that our mothers were literally giving us a hard time and saying how much wine we were drinking all summer long. And essentially, we just, to kind of get them to leave us alone, we were like, no, don't worry. Like, we're not, drinking all the time. We're just staying hydrated. We're drinking tons of Hampton Water. And no matter what rosé we were drinking, we were calling it Hampton Water, Hampton Water, Hampton Water. And literally one late night, my dad, who's always been a big rosé drinker, offered us a glass of pink juice, which is what he would call rosé, for the same reason that we would call it Hampton Water. And basically, me and Ali, it was pretty late, and we had kind of been partying all day, and we looked at him and started giving him a hard time. And we were like, dude, you're not drinking pink juice anymore. Like, you're in the Hamptons. Have some class. Like, look around. You're not drinking pink juice. You're drinking Hampton Water. And he lit up, was like, man, that is so funny. Can you imagine if someone put that on a bottle? Like, people out here would love it, blah, blah, blah. And me and Ali kind of looked at each other, and we were like, we could do that. I'm sure we could figure it out. And so we literally spent the next 6 months. We designed the label, we designed the bottle, and we really came up with this idea of wanting to really create a lifestyle. And our thinking was that, with Miami Vice in the 80s, people, they saw Don Johnson, they saw the white Ferrari, they wanted to roll up their suit jackets, they wanted to be a part of that lifestyle. And even if they'd never been to Miami, they had sort of an idea of what it was. And then in the 90s, it was Malibu, and it was Baywatch, and it was 90210, and people saw that kind of beach lifestyle and said, oh, I got to go out to California. I got to be a part of that. That's where it's kind of all happening. And for us, we really saw that as the Hamptons being that next place. And so our thinking was that people saw things like Diddy's White Party, and now everywhere you go, people have white parties every summer. And, that started out in the Hamptons, and shows like Royal Pains, and now shows like Billions and Summer House on Bravo. Those are all kind of sharing this idea of this Hampton lifestyle, of this, going to the beach and these beautiful houses, and, really enjoying this place that is on the eastern end of Long Island. And so we really took that and said, what's the thing that brings all of that together? Has always been rosé. And so we brought that idea back to my dad. We said, look, this is kind of the concept. This is how we want it to look, and this is how we want it to feel. And he fell in love with it all over again. We ended up getting introduced to Gerard Bertrand a few months later, and we told him the idea of trying to share the lifestyle, and he was all over it. And 3 years later, we've been in the wine business for quite some time now, and back to back 90-point ratings from Wine Spectator. We were the first rosé in the last 20 some years to be on Wine Spectator's top 100 list. And so we like to think that we are playing a pretty serious role in really expanding the rosé wave, not just, on the East Coast or not just in the Northeast, but across the country. And we think around all year round, because so many people forever have just seen rosé as kind of a summer drink. And a big thing for us is, why do you have to put it away on Labor Day? There are plenty of places around the country that don't get cold. I'm out in sunny Southern California, and it's rosé season all year round. So we certainly drink it all the time, and we think everyone else should too.
Absolutely. It tastes best chilled, whether the air around you is chilled or happens to be hot. I agree with you. And I love that story so much, because I think it's just proof that, like you said it in jest, but there are no bad ideas. But then to take the germ of an idea and push it and see how far you can go and how far you can take it. And obviously, those late night moments joking around with your best friend and ribbing your dad are a source of inspiration. But I'm curious, what else gets you in the mood to be creative? Do you have a certain flow that you get into when you need to solve a problem, or maybe when you need to ideate?
Yeah, me and my dad often joke about, we call it our late night meetings. And it's literally like the hour before you fall asleep, and you're kind of rolling around in bed, and it's like, that's a good idea. And so when we were initially designing the label, the 2017 and 2018 vintage had the letter that appeared on the label. And we, obviously working together, have turned that really into more of a manifesto about the brand. But literally, I woke up in the middle of the night and rolled over and grabbed my phone and typed up that whole letter and texted it to my dad at like 1:30 in the morning. And I was like, hey, look at this in the morning, but what do you think of it? And he was like, I love this idea, and basically the whole thing started with, dearest friends, you have great taste. You've just picked up your new favorite bottle of wine. Yes. And so the whole thing was really what kind of pushed the brand. And we put it on the front of the label. And the thinking was that it was sort of our invitation to let people know that they've made the right decision in picking up Hampton water. And we've really carried that throughout the years as what's really informed the rest of the thinking on the brand, and to say, like, welcome to the club with everything that we do. And, our whole thing is, no matter where you are, you could be in Long Island, you could be in Miami, you could be, at a pool party in Ohio, as long as you have Hampton water, you're living the Hampton life. And so that was really kind of our thinking behind the entire brand. But yeah, I mean, the inspiration kind of comes whenever. And I've really never been one to just like, okay, for the next hour, I'm going to be creative. It happens at random times of the day, and often in the middle of the night. So my whole thing is just being able to kind of catch the idea when it comes to me.
I think that's a lovely thought, being able to catch the idea when it comes to you. Yeah, we say all the time, like, you can't schedule creativity. As much as we are in a business, and you're in a business as well, it doesn't always happen between 9 and 5, and it doesn't always happen between 1 and 2 during the meeting when it's supposed to. But right. I love the idea of always just being ready to catch it. Okay. Get your brain warmed up. Let's get into the fun questions. You ready?
Let's do it.
Okay. I just need 1 or maybe 2 or 3 word answers for this next round. If you could trade lives with anyone for a day, who would you trade lives with?
Oh, gosh. Tom Brady.
Okay. On a scale of 1 to 10, how cool are you?
Well, this can't get a one-word answer. I would say probably a 4. But if you say you're cool at all, you're not cool. And so I think probably 0 would be the cool answer. But I'd like to think a 10. That's a complex one. I think if you say you're a 10, you're a 0. If you say you're a 0, you're trying too hard. And you actually want to be cool. So I'm going to stick with 4, but I think I'd like to be a 10. Who wouldn't?
I would give you a 10, but I like your answer. I like the strategy, the strategic approach to answering that question. So Jesse, since I'm giving you a 10 on the cool factor scale, and we know that your product has earned a phenomenal 90-point rating like 3 years in a row, can you tell people where to follow you and where to buy this delicious elixir?
Oh, you mean this stuff right here?
And this stuff right here.
Yeah, so you can find us, if you want to follow us on any social media, you can find us at Hampton Water, on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, just at Hampton Water. And you can find me. We travel all over the country and do things like liquor store tasting, stuff like that. We're constantly promoting places all over the country. So if your local liquor store carries us, you can let us know at Hampton Water. We'll be able to kind of push that out and promote it. Also, if you wanted to go on our website and find a liquor store near you that carried us, we are at www.hamptonwaterwine.com. Scroll down to the bottom, there's a map with all kinds of different spots that have us, and you'll be able to find us there. And if you can't find us at any of those places, which is pretty hard to believe, you can always order a bottle or a case at wine.com or at wineonsale.com. And right now, if on wine.com, you use the promotion Hampton 10, you get 10% off if you order 3 bottles. So all of those places, we will bring it to you as fast as we can.
It's worth it. It's delicious.
Back to back 90-point ratings is hard to beat.
Absolutely. What TV sitcom family would you like to be a member of?
Oh man, that's a good one. Would I like to be a member of? Well, recently I've been watching Sex and the City with my girlfriend, so maybe that little crew would be a lot of fun, although it seems a little stressful. If it was just me, maybe Billions, because those guys seem to kind of work hard, party hard, and they all seem to be very brilliant. But realistically, I'd probably be Bart from The Simpsons. I've been known to get in some trouble, so I would go with Bart, I guess.
That's, again, a very strategically thought out answer. I love it. What's a fashion trend that you just don't get?
Ripped jeans. There's plenty of holes already in jeans. You don't need to wear ripped ones.
If you had access to a time machine, where and when would you go?
I would say, that's a good one. I would say maybe the 80s. It seems like my dad had a pretty good time, and I think I would too. I don't know if you've noticed, I'm growing the hair out since quarantine has started. And so I think I'd fit right in. But yeah, probably the 80s. It just seems like it was a real good time. So I think I would flourish back then. You don't have to worry about social media in 84. You know what I mean? You could get away with a lot more stuff back then.
I am struck again by the strategic thoughtfulness of your answer, like a good time in history to party and have a good time, yet no historical record of said good time.
Exactly.
I love it. Okay, I just have one more. This might be the hardest one, or maybe the easiest one. What is success?
That's tough. You know, if you go on my Twitter, I saw a quote a while ago that one of my coaches actually tweeted. There was, success is never owned, it's leased, and rent is due every day. And so I think that success is a moving target. You know, I think that you can be monetarily successful, you know, but does that mean that you're fulfilled in your life? I don't know. You know, I think that it's something that you got to kind of go out and get every day. You know, whenever you think that you've kind of reached the mountaintop, you realize that you're just on the first hill, you know, and there's a whole lot left to go. So I don't think that success is something that's ever really reached. You know, my dad, who's always been a real inspiration to me, he very easily could rest on his laurels, but he was just busted my chops on the flight out to California that he ran 20-something miles this week and woke up, you know, that morning at 7 a.m. and went on a 5-mile run. And I mean, the guy works harder than anybody I know, and he certainly doesn't have to in most people's books.
I love that. And having had the chance to get to know you a bit, I can say that you are living that as well. I feel like I love how you question us and are always thinking about how can we and what could we do. And I think that that's what's propelled Hampton Water to its success, and cheers to more success down the road. Thanks so much for this time.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
Morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to our creative talk today. I'm so excited to welcome our guest, Maciej Kozina. I got that right, Maciej? Okay.
Yes, you did. Thank you very much.
So Maciej is one of the creative geniuses behind the last ever issue. It's a really, really exciting case. For those of you that are unfamiliar with this campaign, let me just give a couple of highlights. 11 Cannes Lions, including Grand Prix in glass and gold in titanium, which are two of the most difficult categories, I would say. 5 Andes, including a Grandie. And just recently now, 3 D&AD pencils, yellow, graphite, and wood, right? And I mean, this is just a couple of so many accolades that this campaign has reached. But I think that let's play a quick clip so you can see this amazing piece of work. And then when we talk about iconic work, this is a pretty epic piece to show.
In the most recent Gender Equality Index, Poland scored 10 points below the EU average.
They are weaker, they are smaller, they are less intelligent.
Our traditional culture has objectified and marginalized women for years. Due to the lack of formal sex education, entire generations of Polish men learned about women from this. Your Weekend, our country's longest running and most iconic porn magazine. We wanted to start a conversation with all those brought up on Your Weekend's biased portrayal of women. So we bought it. On 2019 International Women's Day, we teamed up Gazeta.pl, BNP Paribas and MasterCard, brands that have a long-term commitment of empowering women, and created Your Weekend's last ever issue. An issue that challenges sexism and misogyny. The cover featured an emerging writer, an acclaimed actress, and a mixed martial arts world champion. Inside, we kept the magazine's original sections, but reimagined their content. Leading Polish female photographers offered a diverse portrayal of womanhood. Stories, essays, and interviews explored the subject of gender equality. Nationwide, offline and online sales were supported by an integrated campaign. We ignited a fierce debate by sending hundreds of copies to journalists and influencers. It made the last ever issue the best-selling issue of the magazine in 10 years. In a country that shames women and where sexual education has been deemed too risky to teach in schools, we took charge of the conversation. We transformed the magazine's social channels into a long-term education platform for sexuality and gender issues. Because no one should ever learn about women from a porn magazine.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. So welcome, Maciej.
Well, welcome and thank you for having me. I'm super excited to join the Geometry Creative Week, and thanks for having me. You've mentioned a lot of accolades, so I'm kind of nervous to give an interview after such a huge build-up. But yeah, thanks for having me, and yeah.
Wow, no, I remember last year when we were in Cannes, I saw this idea and we said, like, this is an incredible game changer idea. No doubt that this creativity, drove business and changed cultures, in many ways. So I just want to understand how you got to this iconic piece of work. So
I think it would be best to start with who the main client is and what the brief was. So Gazeta.pl, they're a news portal like many other news portals in Poland, but they wanted to play a bit more of an active role, so like not only reporting the news, but also sort of like creating it. And on the other hand, they have this like tradition in transformational journalism in Poland. They are actually owned by the same publishing house that published the official newspaper of the Solidarity movement back in 1989. So they wanted something that would be, bold, controversial, that will get people talking, and that something that would resonate with their target audience and sort of like address the main tensions that this target audience has. And they kind of left us with this pretty wide and open brief. They didn't specify a deadline. They kind of like left us with, we just want something that's, you know, very moving, controversial, bold. And yeah, like when you have something, be sure to let us know. And as we were working on that brief, this opportunity has arisen. So at the beginning of December 2019, yeah, 2018, I saw that the magazine is up for sale, the legendary pornographic magazine that I'm gonna be honest, I used to read it when I was young. So I saw that it's available for sale, and I was like, yeah, what if we kind of just publish that, but with completely different content, about women empowerment, gender equality. And that's basically how it started, and everybody just was pretty much on board with that idea. Everybody knew that, yeah, this is exactly what we were looking for, and this is how it started. But the original brief was there was actually a demand for something that's very bold and very provocative, and you can do that if you're a brand like Gazeta PL, which is, about journalism, about, things that can be polarizing. So I guess it was just like a perfect storm of ingredients that made this idea possible.
So yeah, and when you say that the client had an open brief and asking for something bold, I would imagine not in a million years they would think that you were coming back with a proposal to buy an adult magazine as your core part of the business. So tell me a little bit about that process. How did you guys? What was the plan, and how did you put it together? And how did you present it for the first time to a client? I would love to know what that reaction was at the beginning, of course.
So this is kind of a particular story because we're already kind of like deep within the process. We're considering some different like areas that we could address, but we were like nowhere near of having something that's an idea that we feel great about. And then, the magazine went up for sale. I basically texted my ECD at 8 o'clock in the morning, like, David, this is what we should do. And he responded, yeah, this is what we're going to do. And he got in touch with the clients, all through text messages and Messenger, and they basically reacted in the same way. So everybody just was like instantly excited about this idea because it was so rooted in our local context and our local culture, because the magazine, it was so ubiquitous when I grew up, and everybody knew it. Everybody knew what it stood for. So the idea was very easy to kind of like decode, and everybody knew that it had a huge potential to get people talking about something. So I guess the simplicity and the boldness of the idea, it's an idea that you can actually pitch in 1 or 2 sentences. It's that type of idea, and this is what got everybody on board in like almost instantly.
And what was the reaction of the client when you brought this together? Because I imagine that you come into a room and you say, okay, so here's our idea. We're going to buy an adult magazine. I wouldn't imagine that they would say immediately, yes, that was exactly what we were thinking of, did they?
So there wasn't even a conference room. We texted them the idea because the head of marketing at the client side, he used to work for agency. He was a strategic planner for agencies for a long, long time. So he didn't need a regular type of pitch. He kind of like understood the gravity of what we want to do. So like selling this idea was fairly simple. Getting it done was actually extremely difficult.
Wow, a text message. I imagine that the client must have thought it was a spam message, like want to buy a porn magazine. We should buy an adult magazine.
I actually never asked them like how they felt, but what the ECD told me, David, that they were on board instantly. As I said, like the idea was so rooted in our culture and our local context that it just instantly resonated with everybody that heard it. Everybody that heard the idea was like, whoa, this is great. That's amazing. Yeah. So the gravity, the quality, the boldness of the idea did all the talking. It's rarely that you have an idea that's so pure and simple that you don't really need a big pitch to get people on board.
Yeah, no, definitely bold ideas require, bold clients as well that are willing to take, the step and do them. So, okay, so the client buys into the idea. So then what is the next step? You guys go and you approach the adult magazine and you tell them, hey, we want to buy you out. How does this work?
So the story behind is that they wanted to sell it on an online auction site. So we started bidding against other bidders, but at some point we figure out what's the budget and what's the max amount of money that we can pay. I mean, that the clients and partners are willing to pay for the magazine. We've made an offer to the publisher and he accepted. And actually, I had to drive down to another city to sign the contract because nobody had the time in the agency to do that. I still have pictures from the moment that, I signed the contract with the publisher that made VML-YNR a temporary owner of the most iconic pornographic magazine in the history of Poland. So, so getting, putting the money together and buying the magazine, it's still the easy part. As I mentioned earlier, we're somewhere around mid-December, and we kind of know that the best time to put this idea out is International Women's Day. So we know that we're racing against the clock. We have 3 months to put together an entire magazine and create a campaign around it. And, we had to create like 60 pieces of premium content, interviews, essays, photo sessions, the sheer amount of coordinating between the agency, partners, clients, the media agency, the production people, the photographers. It was just a massive undertaking. So I think the logistics against the time frame that we had were the biggest challenge because it's a very simple idea, but sometimes to make a simple idea come to life, that's the most important part.
Yes, of course. And I imagine that even when it comes to life, there's still halfway done, right? Because you still have to, document it and package it and get it ready, to be able to share it with the world. But no doubt, it's amazing. I have a question. So did the magazine, the owners, the previous owners, did they know anything about the plans that you had with it? Or
no, no, they didn't. We didn't disclose any information. I believe, but this, I'm not sure because I wasn't the one doing the negotiating. This was, our CEO of the agency was kind of like in charge of that. But I believe they didn't know what we want to do. We just told them that, we just want to do something with this for a client. But the publisher, he was kind of old school, so he probably couldn't suspect that something like this could be in store for his magazine. So I'm pretty sure that they had no idea of what's to come.
Okay, so buying the adult magazine, then pivoting and turning it into a magazine that showcases women's voices. That's a brilliant turn. Did you have how it is looking now? Was there any debate or brainstorming on how it could be executed, or you guys had already clear from the start what you wanted and you had envisioned already what you wanted the magazine to look like?
That's a good question. I think it was one of those cases that you kind of like fly the plane and build it at the same time, because again, the opportunity and the timing, they were pretty much against us. And, having a lot of people involved and made the process of kind of like distilling of what do we want inside the magazine, it was pretty difficult because we had to consult it with with women's organizations, with journalists. Obviously there's the client, the partner, so there were like a lot of people involved in the executional part. Again, we sort of like felt the gravity of the idea that we have, and we were so afraid of wasting a good idea on a so-so or mediocre execution. So like getting to the moment, to the point in we know what we want the execution to be, it took us a couple of weeks more, and then we had only a couple of weeks to actually produce it. So yeah, to your point, it was incredibly challenging to figure out the execution.
All right. Okay. And when we talk about how the client gave you the brief, and of course we always look for those clients that would tell us, you know, take a big bold brief and do whatever you want with it. But we all know that day to day it's not always the case, right? And we're looking a lot for these type of briefs and waiting for these big, you know, gems that come out of nowhere to do iconic work. What would your advice be, you know, to, let's say, the process where you have a non-traditional brief, you know, and how do you recognize the opportunity that to know that there's something iconic that you can do here?
Well, I'm like one of those people that kind of have this idealistic belief that a big, bold idea should kind of scare you just a little bit and make you feel a little bit uncomfortable. If you have that, then I think you know that you have something that's truly exceptional and that will, you know, resonate and get people talking, so on and so forth. But a lot of it boiled down to the relationship we had with the client and the people who worked over there and the people from BNP Paribas or with the people of MasterCard. They gave us a lot of credit and a lot of trust that we would deliver on making this idea happen. So I would say that probably the key part in getting this idea made is your relationship with the client, because without it, they will not be willing to take any risk. And it is a risk. And people usually avoid taking those. So if you can make them feel comfortable about taking a leap of faith with you, then yeah, that's the most important ingredient in getting a bold idea out there.
Yeah, that's great. So tell me a little bit about the results of the campaign. So mostly when you talk about creativity, there's maybe a disconnection sometimes when we think that, oh, we cannot do great work that is bold and creative, and we cannot do work that at the same time is, you know, effective and drives results. Now, clearly this campaign did both. Tell us a little bit about the results of this campaign. Tell us a bit about how the sentiment was, you know, from the people in Poland when this rolled out as well.
Well, obviously, it's, you know, I think that bold ideas are inherently divisive. So it's not like the whole country jumped on it and everybody was in love with it. There was a lot of resist. There was a lot of, you know, polarity. There was a lot of conversation of like, why did you ruin a perfectly good porn magazine, and so on and so forth. And then again, whenever you try to challenge a status quo, you will feel a pushback. And that's what we were expecting, and we were ready for it. And, you know, a big shout out goes to the clients and the partners who did not back down when not everybody was just in love with the idea. But in general, the sentiment was a lot more positive than negative. But, you know, it's how internet and social media works. Usually the negative voices are heard a lot more. They're just a little bit more louder than any other voice in that virtual room. But I think it would be best to kind of like bring it down to KPIs of this particular campaign. So News Portal wanted to be more relevant, more edgy, more bold, more, you know, relevant to their target audience. And this is basically translated into how many people go onto their website and get news from those websites. And we delivered on those KPIs because we've increased the entries to their website by, I think, 40% of what it was before we did that. So we delivered on those business results as well. But then again, that's a comfort of working for a client who doesn't have a product to sell per se. They just needed people's attention for a couple of seconds. And we just delivered on it, I feel.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about, and I'll ask you about brand purpose, right? Because this is definitely a, you know, a brand purpose-led type of idea. And you would have, let's say, a divided sentiment in the industry, right? With latest, you know, Cannes editions, we see more and more every time of brand purpose. So what is your sentiment in terms of brand purpose? And I want you to, you know, try to be very subjective in terms of like excluding your campaign of the last issue, but what is in overall your sentiment about brands and having a bigger role in society?
Well, I would try to focus on the term brand purpose. I love it when it's not a buzzword getting thrown around in keynotes and PowerPoint presentations or whatever. I think that the time for being neutral is way gone, and I think that a brand can't no longer be neutral on divisive and tension generating topics. They should take a stand. They should pursue bold ideas whenever they had the chance. Well, if they don't, they will just be, lost in the clutter. And I think, the worst thing that you can do in advertising is just to do something that doesn't resonate on any other level with the consumer. I think that this is just money wasted. So there's also a pragmatic angle to that. I think brands should take a stand. I think brands should stand out, and the way to do it is by creating, working and bringing to life those big bold ideas. And another sort of like facet of it is that I think that the time when brands just did the talking is also long gone. Brands should not be just talking. They need to act, because when they act, they actually have something interesting to say. And like, with this being said, there's also like the agency part of it. Like, we as agencies, we need to move faster than ever before. Everything around us is happening in this incredible breakneck pace, and we should not allow old ways of doing things keep us from being ahead. So go for bold and go for fast. Those are like the main 2 points, I feel.
All right, great. So tell me a little bit about the recognitions that you got. So you got Cannes Lions, you got DNAD. Did you enter this into Effie's, for example?
We did enter it to Effie's, into Effie's in Poland. We did get an award in the category. It was either publishing or CSR related. I don't want to, give you the wrong information, but yes, we did enter it to the Effie's, and we got an award at Effie's, or honorable mention. I would have to double check that.
Yeah, okay.
But it got recognized. It was paired with a lot of tangible results.
So of all these awards that you got and recognitions, well-deserved recognitions for the incredible work, which ones excited you the most? And let me ask you a second part of that question. Which ones excited the client the most?
Oh dear, that's a tough question. Like, for me personally, it's always the DNAD pencils, because they're the oldest, the most difficult to get. But this is just me.
I second that opinion, by the way. It's true.
Yeah, it's incredibly hard. Yes. And I regret us not entering this into more categories, because the award budget ran out when we did DNA cheese. That's why I only got 2. But yeah, let's cut this far out. And I think I'm speaking for everybody involved, that every first for Polish advertising that this campaign won was super important for everybody, because we got the first ever Grand Prix, we got the first ever Titanium, we got the first ever Grande, we got a lot of other accolades that I can't even name, because there were like so many of them. There were like special awards just for publishers, or like for media, and so on and so forth. So there was just a lot, and everybody could find something for themselves. But I think people got really excited by those 2 first Cannes Lions for Polish advertising. And, there's also a lot of things happening in the backstreet, because BNP Paribas went on to become the most socially responsible bank in Poland for the 2nd year in a row. So there's also like a lot of industry-specific awards that are very important to the clients. It's pretty hard to pinpoint a certain one, but I think we can all agree that the Grand Prix and the Titanium were the most important for everybody. And I don't want to, sound quirky about it, but awards are nice, but it's gonna sound cheesy, but I think like the biggest award is seeing people get excited about what you did, because at the end of the day, this is what this is what we do. Somebody said to me once that awards are kind of like desserts. Yeah. First, you need to make a kick-ass dinner, and when it's done, then you can have dessert. So the dinner was great, and the dessert was also fantastic. But I'm pretty much most excited about the dinner part.
That's fantastic. I couldn't agree more with that part. It's like if you do great work, awards is just a result of that, right? So it's fantastic. I wonder what would your advice be, for example, when you would still have within organizations this division about people who believe in the awards culture and people who don't believe in the awards culture. And I don't blame The people that don't believe in the awards culture sometimes is because, you know, some of the festivals maybe haven't been responsible enough, and the agencies haven't been responsible enough with the awards culture in the sense of like doing work that is just made for awards. But how would you defend the idea of, because I would imagine that your agency has an awards culture, and your creatives have a thrive for great work that gets recognized. So how would you defend this to, for example, other members of the organization, like, I don't know, a chief financial officer that's looking at all the numbers and saying, why are we spending so much on awards, right? By the way, my chief financial officer is amazing. She doesn't say that though, but still, I can tell that there are other chief financial officers that would say, why are we wasting money?
Oh, it's a very hard question to unpack because I think there are two perspectives you could answer it. One from a creative perspective, which is, you know, me as a creative, I'm mostly motivated to do incredible things that drive my portfolio. Somebody said to me, you're not working to impress your current CD, you're working to impress your future CD. That's obviously a very short-sighted creative perspective on why they matter. Like at the end of the day, you know, I'm not, you know, that's the only thing that kind of like professional wise, like portfolio wise and career wise. So that's like the creative perspective of it. But it always happens in the context of the agency. And there's always huge difficulty in measuring tangible results of getting an award. They're so difficult to, you know, to put a number next to them. And, you know, I think that creative culture is something that should permeate all around the organization, even to the level of the chief financial officer. And there should be an understanding that if you do an amazing piece of work for a client that pays for it and it delivers results, then other clients will be more interested in maybe taking more risks with you. Maybe they will invite you to more pitches. They would like to see what you could do for their brand. So there's always the new business and, you know, current business angle. And the other thing is, you know, it's easier to attract more talented people. You know, the more awards a shop gets, the better creatives it will lure. And I just think that, yeah, we should try to attract the best people, not only creatives, but planners, people from the client service. So if you do amazing work, it will draw amazing people into the organization. It's hard to measure that in numbers, but I think it's a real thing and it just kind of like works.
That is completely right. Yeah. Okay. So what about, and I asked you this topic as well, because, I mean, with this whole COVID situation, there was a conversation happening on, within the industry about, brands or agencies that can feel too opportunistic. If you, you know, roll out some campaigns are rolling out that people were saying, oh, I'm sure that they're doing this for Cannes. And there's a lot of word on the street saying, hey, this next Cannes that's coming up next year, the one that has been, it's going to be like, it's going to have its own category of COVID. So what is your position on this? Because there was a online signature type of thing where you have to like go and pledge about saying, please Cannes, do not accept any COVID entries. So what's your take on that?
Well, I agree with what you're saying. I think the healthlines next year is going to be a pretty populated category, probably the most growing category ever. You know, I think, you know, when COVID happened, it really showed that sometimes you just want to force yourself into doing something that you shouldn't be doing, that you kind of lack some of the judgment, and it resulted in making in agencies and brands making ton of campaigns or, you know, videos or print ads or activations that kind of felt, you know, all the same. It became this kind of like wallpaper advertising. I think, you know, agencies are not only to blame because in a lot of cases clients have that push. Okay, it's COVID, we need to say something. You know, I would sometimes wish that we had more bravery to say, you know, guys, no, we don't. We should not be taking part in that conversation. And I think it's not only about COVID. It's about what's happening right now in the US. The whole Black Lives Matter gaining so much momentum after those terrible, terrible events. And you see, you know, brands and agencies just trying to jump that bandwagon. You know, my opinion on it is just very short-sighted, very forced. And I think when you're trying to address something that's so current, so ongoing, you have to be extra careful about how you're trying to address it or join the conversation. In times like these, you should be even more, diligent and diligent about what you're trying to do, because there's a pretty big subject, very emotional subject, and everybody has an opinion on that. So it's very easy to make something that will just be bland and like all the other COVID or BLM ads, or make something that's very tone deaf or heavy handed. So but to your point, I don't think that this is only, the fault of the agencies. I think it's just a general short-sightedness of marketing in general in the face of, big things happening around us.
Yeah, I was reading I'm on Twitter, and I was looking at some of the posts, people from the industry. It was a very prominent chief marketing officer from the industry that said that you get called if you go out and talk about it, but you also get called out if you don't say anything, right? So which one is it, right? Which one should I do? And I think that is the biggest challenge that most of the brands and most of the agencies are facing now, is that how do I go to market at the same time? How do I keep being that genuine brand rather than feeling opportunistic? Even worse, not saying anything and then being called out for not supporting, which a lot of the brands have been under the frame of Black Lives Matter. So what would be your advice for brands or to be able to go out and be genuine in what they do?
I think, like to your point, somebody said on Twitter that you should. Then again, another very noteworthy CMO said on LinkedIn that he's tired of hearing COVID or BLM ideas. I think that is such a delicate subject. How to advise brands on whether to take a stand? I think you just have to look at the brand equity. You have to, you have to have a good understanding of what the brand stands for. And I think the brand should have a history in not only saying something, but doing something. Like for me, a great example of doing something notable in terms of BLM is what Nike did, because they've been supporting African-American athletes for decades. They stood by Colin Kaepernick. So I feel that them taking voice was very much appropriate. And if you're, let's say, a brand of washing powder that has never ever done anything in the realm of, equality or, racial issues, that I think you should remain quiet and maybe think about what to do in the future, how to build an authentic equity around it. But then again, it all boils down to the brand. You just have to feel if it's right or not. And there's also a question if the brand is defined well enough, because a lot of brands, they go through this kind of like an identity crisis, not being sure of what they, want to stand for. And I guess it all boils down to the brand. You just have to, know that it fits this brand because we've been doing it for years.
Great response. Okay, so I'm gonna jump into a bit of quick fire questions for you. Okay, so tell me, what's the most exciting part of the creative process that gets you out of bed in the morning?
Oh, that's okay. That's like a two-part answer. For me, it's the moment that you have the idea, that you have it. The moment you know that you cracked it, that you found the answer to that super complicated question that's like somewhere hidden in the brief. That's the first part. And the second part is getting people excited about it. You see that people in the agency are getting excited about this idea, or your creative partner, your CD, people in client services, people at strategy department, people in the media. And then the client is excited about this idea, and it comes to life, and you see actual people, I don't want to say real people, but you actually see the people who are we trying to have a conversation with get excited about, these ideas. And, these two things, I would say that after all these years, they still feel as rewarding as they did when I started years back as a junior copywriter. those two, they still give me goosebumps. That's what, gets me out of bed.
All right. So, what is the thing you don't like at all?
What I don't like at all? Oh, I think, a lot of thing boils down to the brief. If the brief is crisp and clear, it's a pleasure to work with. You know that your idea will be also simple, intuitive. It's not going to be too nuanced. That everything will kind of like just flow and go naturally. And sometimes if the brief is not as sharp and as crisp, it's very easy to go into that grind mode, which of course you do, and you do it over and over again, and you still manage to crack it, but it's a lot less enjoyable than having this answer to this super crispy. I feel that the brief is half of the answer. So
Okay.
if you have that taken care of, then your golden is going to be a lot more fun.
Well, I think that I can't believe that the key to our happiness is in the planner's hand, the strategy.
Yes, unfortunately, they often get underappreciated and they don't get enough credits. And they should, and people at client services, I mean, they're all part of the wider creative process. I mean, basically we just kind of like process the things that we get. And if we don't get good input, both from the planners and from the, client service, then we won't find a good answer. And there's another part of that. We need them as partners to bring whatever idea that we have to life, and making sure that happens. So I guess it's a question of good brief and good cooperation between different branches of the agency. It makes it a lot easier, a lot more enjoyable.
Okay. Biggest piece of career advice you wish you knew when you started in advertising?
That's a tough one. I think I want to say it's better to ask for forgiveness than for permission. I think, I think, looking back, a lot of times I feel that I censored my own thoughts, whether talking with my creative partner or presenting the idea. So it's very important to go with that gut feeling, because if it's wrong, then your creative partner will make sure that you're on the right track or not wasting your time, or your CD will do it for you. But you should not try not to censor yourself. So yeah, I think that's pretty important. And the other bit is learn to pitch ideas. It's a lot of great ideas are wasted in not being able to present it properly. If you have a great idea but you can't get people excited about it, then what's the point of having that idea in the first place? So I would say, yeah, brush up on your presentation skills real fast. They're as important as your conceptual skills.
All right. And final question that I'm going to ask you: what advice would you give our teams or our people to be able to reach work that can one day get us a Grand Prix glass or a gold titanium or a Grand Effie, in the sense of work that is recognized as your work has been recognized?
That's a tough one, because it's like asking for a formula. I don't think there isn't like a single recipe on how to achieve it, especially that a lot of ideas are so nuanced, or they're like so media agnostic, or they feel so non-standard. I think it's just like preserving and nurturing a culture of creativity. I think you have to do everything that you can, and I mean that everybody in the agency should be excited. Everybody should be excited about the work that we do, about the ideas that we have, working with ideas in general. And I think that we manage somehow to still be excited about what we're doing, then those ideas are much easier to come by.
All right. Great. So this has been fun. Thank you so much, Maciej, for your time today. It's been a pleasure catching up with you today. And of course, for anyone interested in connecting with Maciej, I'm sure that Maciej will be pleased to, answer any question that you guys have. I don't know, Maciej, do you still have any copies from the magazines?
I left them back in Warsaw, actually. But I do have a very nice PDF of the Polish and the English edition, so I can, make that available.
Just want to clarify that that's the new magazine that he's talking about. Okay. So.
Yes, I also have a huge stockpile of the old magazine because we had to buy a ton of those in order to get more in depth into research of, because like everybody had like a general idea of what the magazine was, but like when we were making the magazine, we wanted to keep the original sections but fill it with new content. So we had to go back to the original magazine for inspiration, how to lay out our magazine. So I also have a huge stack of these.
That's fascinating. Fascinating to hear. Well, thank you, Maciej, and of course, we really hope to talk to you soon again. And thank you so much for taking the time to join us in this conversation in this Creative Week.
Thank you, Manuel. Good talking to you.
Thank you.
Hi, it's Beth Ann Kamenko, Global CEO of Geometry, and day one is now a wrap of our Geometry Creative Week. Thank you for joining us. We felt great about today. I hope you did too. It sounds like it from all the different comments we're getting. And we have a lot in store for the rest of the week. So we're hoping you're going to join us for more of the conversations ahead. Looking forward to it. See you tomorrow.